Welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stober. The federal government pledges a food-secure nation where citizens have access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food. Attaining this will demand radical measures to address impediments to sustainable agricultural practices, increased production, improved post-harvest regimes, enhanced value chains and affordable food. The safety of plants, veterinary and aquatic resources is an important aspect of food security, sustainable agriculture and economic development. Now, this is the main plank of discussions as I engage the leadership of an agency set up to promote and regulate sanitary and phytosanitary measures for animal, plants and aquatic resources under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Dr. Vincent Isegbe is the Controller General of the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service. A veterinarian, he joins me on One on One. Thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Right. Well, let's start off by looking at what quarantine is all about. Now, not much is known about this, especially the agency that exists in Nigeria. But we do know what quarantine services are. But that it's an agency now supervised by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is not what is well known. So let's start on that premise.
Okay. Thank you very much. The Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service came officially into being in 2018 by the Act of the National Assembly. Hitherto, we had existed as the Planned Quarantine Service for as far back as 1959. Then the Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Quarantine. Then you have the National Veterinary Quarantine Service. These two were harmonized into one agency called the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service in 2018 during the tenure of our late President Musa Yar'Adua. That's when they submitted the executive bill and it was eventually signed into law in 2018. Now, because we're existing as a department, people could not really know what we were doing. Because the exposure wasn't there, we were subsumed in the normal civil service bureaucracy. And so people did not know much of what we're doing, except the critical stakeholders like exporters, those who had to have their food inspected and certified for exports. But following the act, we have become more prominent, we have become more exposed, to the general public, and our activities have become more accessible and people appreciate what we do. Now, quarantine itself, I will surprise you that there's no university in the world that teaches quarantine as a course, so to say. You don't come out with BSc quarantine or MSc quarantine. It's when you've had your first degree that you now come to the quarantine service and will begin from ground zero. So it takes time for proficiencies to be developed in the service, but over the years we've been able to do that. We have quite officers with PhDs, specialist training, in the course of our activities. So we are self-sufficient and we've been doing most of our research and consultancy work without even asking outsiders to come and help us. That so far is just a little background of how we evolve as a quarantine service. We have tried as much as we could, to bring to fore the need for people to know that agricultural produce need to be inspected. As long as people are moving from one place to another, food will be carried from one location to another. Especially, we Africans, we like our foods, and those in diaspora equally want this food to be taken to them. But again, the snag is that the food that we're taking to them, those people in those countries, do they know about the type of food? Have they seen it before? Do they have any protocol on those food items? How is it preserved? How is it presented to them? How do we carry it? So those are the things that the quarantine service does to ensure that we give comfort to any importing country that wants any of our agricultural produce to leave Nigeria to their country. By WTO standards and regulations and the International Plant Protection Convention, the quarantine service is duty-bound to do a pest risk analysis for any agricultural produce that we want to export to another country. We'll do that report and then send it to the exporting country. Their own quarantine service will do a concurrent audit, and if they are satisfied that, okay, we are good to go, then they can now enlist us to export that commodity to their country. And that's the tedious job that we've been doing over the years to ensure that our produce get accepted by the importing countries and they feel good having our produce. The second mandate in trying to do that is that we don't want to sell our produce to that country and then we are in violation of the World Trade Organization regulations or the destination country regulations, as it has to do with their food, because food security is very, very important to every nation. Whatever you are bringing in, if it is not safe, the WTO will not allow trade in that commodity. And that's why WTO will bend its rules, whatever it does, to ensure that whatever you are taking from one country to another is safe. What I mean safe, I mean very safe for the importing country to eat and then sleep well. So that's the enormous task that we do in the quarantine service.
So this suggests to me that your activities would definitely cut across various ministries. For instance, if you had to ensure the safety of plants, produce, agricultural produce, and even animals, it means you will be dealing with many organizations. Your activities will also have something to do with the new Federal Ministry of Livestock Development. And you also mentioned the matter of export, which means somewhere along the line you have an eye on relations as well with the Ministry of Trade and Investment. So how do you coordinate all of this?
Well, it's a mandate that we have been trained to execute. We deal directly with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, which has supervising ministry. Because animals are involved in the course of exportation, we relate with the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development. And for fisheries and aquatic products, we relate with the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. We relate with the Federal Ministry of Environment in respect to the certification of endangered species, animals that are going to extinct, which we don't want, and the international community are in preservation of them. It's only the Federal Ministry of Environment that issues the CITES certificate. Once they issue, then we exercise the authority of the execution of the CITES certificate. And of course, we deal with the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs too, because when you talk about trade relations, you need to do bilateral trade agreements, before exportation go on. So it's the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs that does the meetings, arranging for us to meet with the counterparts from other countries, diplomatic relations and all those things, to ensure that these things are carried through. And it makes it easier when they're involved. So the quarantine service deals with many ministries to ensure that our work is done seamlessly.
Now you take care of the standards, adherence to the standards for produce and products would be for export. And so one is left asking, who regulates the standards of produce products that are consumed locally, internally?
Well, the mandate of the quarantine service does not delve into certification of domestic produce, so to say. But we need to be careful. Let me explain. We are basically involved in products that are intended for export or import. That's where our primary mandate is. Right. But along the line, before produce can get exported, we need to be sure that those producing it are producing it according to the export standard. That's of the international community. So we do backward integration to let those who are producing it through producer associations or research institutes or organizations that are involved, to let them know, if you are producing for this country, please ensure that the pesticide level is this. Probably there's a minimum standard. The minimal residual level is universal, so to say. But some countries will insist, because of the peculiarity of their own country, to say, look, we want our own level to be this. So you need to know what each country wants, so they can advise, the exporters properly on how to export. Take snail, for example. The way they export snails to the US is different from it's done to the UK. So we want to know where you're exporting to, so that we can guide you appropriately and ensure that you meet the specific import regulations of those countries. And when the import permit is given to you, some of those conditions are stated there, so you know exactly. So it's the duty of the quarantine service to ensure that it is fully met, so that by the time your agro-commodities get to the destination country, it has a seamless entry. Now, some countries demand for what you call additional declaration. That is to say, they want you to go beyond the normal mandatory import requirement to say, you don't have this in that produce, or you don't have that. Now, take the case of say, either snail or the case of hibiscus, which is a commodity that we export to Mexico and other European countries. They want that declaration that you don't have caprabito, that is Rogonema granarium, because that pest has been eliminated in Mexico since 1946. So they don't want it to enter their country. So the quarantine service will do everything within our powers to ensure that it is not there. And we don't have an issue with that. Though the caprabito is a storage pest. So any of those exporters do exactly that. And to ensure that these things are properly done, over the past 2-3 years, we have developed what we call the Quarantine Export Certification Value Chain. This is a comprehensive protocol that will help exporters know exactly what they are supposed to do. And that's part of the backward integration that we're talking about. It doesn't make sense. If somebody is able to produce or buy, say, 10 containers, 50 containers, and he brings it and the quarantine service say, oh, sorry, this does not meet the export need, take it away. We feel it is improper. So we guide exporters from the point of production on the farm up to the point of export. That's why I said, well, we are not involved, but those that are intended for export, they need to know what they're producing for export. So the quarantine export certification value chain involves 6 critical stakeholders. You have the farmer producer, who organizes himself with the police, with his own self-regulation status, which we have told them what to do. Then you have the supplier aggregator, who is like the wholesaler who buys. He knows what he's supposed to do, how to package them, what pesticide level, and how to trace the supplier farmer that supplied the commodity to him. Then we have the Nigerian Cultural Quarantine Service, where the regulators, so we put an eye on both the farmer producer and the wholesaler aggregator, supplier aggregator. Then you have the state government. Well, of course, the farms are in state governments, within the state. So they supervise the land, supervise the farmers, the cooperatives, the farmers group, and what have you. Then you have the service providers, those who provide cold chain to cool the meat or cool the milk from the point of collecting milk to either the cooperative reservoir, where it's either pasteurized or treated, or pasteurized, so to say, before the milk is sold, or it is kept in the cold chain so that the vegetables or fruits do not deteriorate before they get on the plane. So these are the 6 critical stakeholders, and each one of them, we have advised them on what role to play, so that at the end of the day, we'll have a holistic, wholesome food. Self-regulation has become something critical in this country, that we want every part of the value chain, to exercise full authority over what they do. And that's the only way that we can make progress as a country.
All right. Well, as a regulator, at what point do you come in here? Because, well, these products are farm produced from the farm to the gate of the plane. At what point do you come in to ensure that these standards are met? Because if you just say enlightenment, yes, some might just step ahead and say, well, we have taken care of all of this. But since your agency needs to ensure that the standards are strictly adhered to? At what point do you come in here?
Good. Officially, we come at the point of inspection and certification. Officially. That's when the the exporter brings his commodity for us to inspect, certify, issue them the necessary certificate.
You do a random inspection or specific, every part of it.
Good, I'm coming to that. So what we do in the value chain is that in each of those stages, if you have a farm and the farm is intended for export, you have a quarantine officer that supervises production on the farm. That is, he knows when you are planting the seeds, he watches the seed grow. At the point of application of pesticide or biopesticide, he's there. He knows where you bought the pesticides from. He registers it against your name, takes inventory of the date, quantity, who applied it. The day of harvest, the quarantine officer is there to guide the harvest and to ensure that as you're harvesting, sand, the soil, does not contaminate the agro-produce. Or there's no bacteria or any other pathogen that will contaminate the milk or whatever that is intended for export. So by the time you collect, whoever is collecting, the quarantine service is aware that if it's for milk, then it's in a refrigerated van at a particular temperature. He ensures that that is done. So at each stage, the quarantine service is there to monitor those agro-commodities that are intended for export. Then finally, when it comes to us for inspection and certification, we have sufficient record to know whether we are going to do the inspections, but we don't normally do 100% inspection. We do sampling. Okay. There's no way you can do 100 inspection for all the commodities because that's the essence of checking from the point of production up to this level. And for farmers that have consistently been doing well, or exporters that have consistently been doing well, they already have a track record that we know, okay, we are sure of this farm, this is what their standard is, and over the time, they've been doing well. So there's minimal inspection of those ones. But for sure, before we issue the certificate, the inspection, then we'll certify and then issue them the necessary phytosanitary certificate or the zoosanitary certificate for them to export their commodities.
Right. Yeah. At this point, what we would be looking at would be how these services impact directly on, one, the economy, and of course, the matter of food security. We're talking here about export mainly. And so some might wonder, well, if the emphasis is on ensuring international standards, foods are produced locally, and the intent of the government is for Nigeria to produce enough before export. How does this impact the entire value chain?
You have asked 3 questions. One, let me start by whether we can produce enough. Yes, we can produce enough. Nigeria has 923,000 square kilometers of land. Some will say 34 million square meters. That land we have not used probably half of it, probably 30, 40%. So we have enough land to plant. And that's why when we engage with stakeholders, we encourage youths to go into agriculture. I will specifically advise them on the various value chains because the quarantine service is a value chain specialist. As a youth, you don't need to own a farm. You can actively engage in agribusiness in doing so much without necessarily owning a farm. You can own a cold chain facility, either the mobile one or the static one like a cold store or a mobile cold van. You can own a warehouse where people will come and keep their produce. You collect rent on it. Whenever they want to move them for shipment, they pay you. You can do what they call a warehouse receipt system, where people come, deposit their commodities with you. Maybe they want like 50,000, 1 million, 3 million. You give to them. They go solve their problem. By the time they want to come back, you do plus and minus. They take their agro-commodities. They either pay you cash or you collect the commodity in lieu of whatever it is, and you make your money. You can be involved in physical transportation of goods from one place to another. You could serve as a sprayer or an agronomist, going from farm here and there. So youth can be involved in those value chains that will help agribusiness, and everybody is a win-win situation for everyone. Now, to the other two questions. Yes, Nigeria is such a vast country that virtually what we produce here, the international community consumes. There's hardly any commodity that we produce here in Nigeria that is not sold in the international market, from sugarcane to fruits and vegetables, cucumber, tomato, peppers. In fact, we have specialist peppers here in Nigeria. There's the Nsuka yellow pepper, fantastic taste. There's the Miango pepper in Jos, fantastic hot pepper. I'm yet to see pepper that is as hot as Miango pepper. I've tried to approach the Plateau State government for some time now to see how, we can work on that so that that pepper can be exported as Nigeria Miango pepper. Miango because there's a town on the plateau called Miango where this hot pepper comes from. It's hotter than the pepper from Mexico. So,
right. All those chilies, right?
Yes, chilies, yes. Then when you come to our ginger, we have one of the best. In fact, other countries in the Asian countries buy like 1 container of Nigerian ginger and blend with 3 to sell in the international market. Now, this is where Nigerians can come in, and this is what we are preaching. Because the quarantine service is at the economic end of agriculture. And we tell people who are exporters, enlighten people who have the money to do agribusiness, say, look, why don't you get a processing plant for ginger? Clean, treat, and then you sell that ginger premium price. Rather than just harvesting the ginger and then other nationals are coming to pack them in the container, you sell them off at very low price because it's raw, unprocessed. New value addition. If you want to sell sesame, what they call ridi in Hausa, and in my local dialect it's called ehia. Now, why do you have to sell raw ehia? Why don't you dehusk it? If you dehusk it, it's clean, neat, you sell premium. And for, nuts like cashew, the cashew nut that is roasted, clean, without even adding salt or cinnamon or honey to it, sells 3 times the value of the same quantity, 3 to 4 times the same quantity of the one that is not treated. Who doesn't like good money? Everybody likes good money. So it only involves us Nigerians looking at where we can make agro dollars, and invest in those areas and make all the money. Lots of countries are looking for our produce. Nigeria produces a lot of cinnamon. Cinnamon is used as a taste enhancer in bakeries, and we have lots of it. So it's just for us to harness it. We produce hibiscus. Our hibiscus is one of the top best in the world. Countries go for hibiscus because the titration rate is about 4 times what other countries are producing. So the color in literal translation means you can get the color of the hibiscus or the nutrients 4 times what other countries does because of the special nature of our hibiscus. Talk of our red goods, Kano red. The skin that they take to Morocco and they say Moroccan leather is Kano red or Kano brown goods. So, but because we have not processed it enough, people come buy it, take it to countries like Morocco, and because they are closer to the Mediterranean countries in Europe, it's Morocco they know. Of course, yam. They say Ghanaian yam. It's Nigerian yam.
Yes, but particularly when you speak of yam, there are other issues here involved where Nigerians or Nigerian entrepreneurs willing or trying to export face hurdles where even after they get the certification that is required, something always goes wrong. Now, these are issues. Do you advise on some of these impediments to smooth exports?
Yes, sir. Quarantine service will preach self-regulation and will continue to preach self-regulation because that is the bottom line. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'll go ahead and do it whether anybody coerces me or not, because that is best for my business. Now, two things happen during the widely reported yam. You know, bad news never disappears. I didn't know the issue of yam will come up today, but I'll still address it. Now, someone exported his own yam to the US. The other person exported to the UK. Now, what happened was that the person that did to the US did not have any problem, because I was there at the launch of the yam export, the official yam export. That was during the time of our Honorable Minister, Chief Audogwe. The other person, I learned, he was told that, oh, you don't need to go through the quarantine. They don't need quarantine for sanitary certificates in the UK. You can export. Why do you have to go through the hassles? Somehow, he listened to that voice. And then he took it there, and he has some issues. In addition to that, we learned that the shipper permit me to use the word, this shipping line that stops from port to port, picking cargo. So it took extra time before it entered the UK. So by the time the yam entered the UK, they were like virtually cooked because of the heat. So those two issues played, and the exporter whom the yams, I mean the importer now, whom the yams were to confirm on tele that, look, this is what happened to the consignment. But you see, bad news is we're still talking about what happened more than 6-7 years ago. So the quarantine service will advise any exporter. If you go to our website, www.naqs.gov.ng, and you roll down our menu, you will see the charges that the quarantine service charge is very minimal. Very minimal. Sometimes 2,500, sometimes 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 40 or 50,000, depending on. So how do you compare that to a whole container that is worth probably 50 million or 60 million? You know, that you won't want to go through this. We are trade facilitators. So we don't charge to discourage you from doing business. We just charge minimally to enable us, contain some of the services that we render as a government agency. So we encourage exporters to come. Let's sit down with us, discuss with us. And we equally advise exporters too. If you have a consignment, don't just leave it in the hands of clearing agents. Let us know. Oh, you are so company, you have this consignment intended for export, and you are bringing it on board for inspection. Let us just know. It will help. If and when, the clearing agent knows that, the quarantine service is aware that the owner knows that his consignment is there. And the major challenge comes because many of those clearing agents are not genuine. We had cases whereby we had to trace the offices and addresses of those agents that were in default, whereas they're not traceable. So exporters too should ensure that they go to genuine, registered clearing agents who can be held accountable for any malpractice. That will help. That will be a win-win situation for everyone.
Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll raise other issues pertaining to quarantine and its impact on food security. Stay with us.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
1-on-1, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network. Thanks for staying with us. I'm still here with Dr. Vincent Isegbe, Controller General, Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service. And we've been looking at agricultural quarantine and food security. And you had just explained to us that an incident that's almost 6 or 7 years now is still playing out in the public domain. Bad news, you say, travels. So let's see the other aspect of all of these, the good news, as you could explain to us.
The good news is that the quarantine service is involved in ensuring food security, for the country. By food security means you have this food, it's available, it's accessible, across cultures, across tastes, is what you can easily use. There's no cultural barrier to it, and when you want this food, it's there for you. It's nutritious, because if it's not nutritious, then there's no food security. So it's a combination of all this that is referred to as food security. So a country that is food secure means there's enough food to eat, it's available, it's accessible, it's nutritious, you don't need to struggle so much to be able to get it, and this and that. Now, for the quarantine service, we contribute to food security by ensuring that whatever is being produced, meet those international standards. When we have stakeholder engagements, we ensure that, look, you need to produce food at this level, at this level, at this standard. So the messages are cascaded down. The regulation that we put in place for all the value chain operators in the quarantine export certification value chain are cascaded down, for the stakeholders to know what to do exactly. We contribute to the fact that if you are producing, say, snails, we tell you how to produce it, we tell you how not to produce it. So at the end of the day, there's knowledge sharing, for people to know exactly what to do. We are not directly involved in production, but we help, to aid that production is done in a way that it is safe, and so that as humans eat it, their bodies will be nourished, and then we can make some money, through the export of those agricultural produce. And when we sit and we let people know, we contribute, we contribute to research. Because in the course of all this, we are involved in research and, say, biopesticide, which is currently what we are on. We have a lot of our officers in various schools, even in Nigeria and overseas, trying to break these genes of pesticide use, and we are focusing on biopesticides. And then we let people know that, look, like we have chingus on sniper. You are aware, too, that the person that appeared on TV the other time was so eager, showing people how he uses sniper on beans and all those things.
Exactly.
And you will see that he's doing so ignorantly, because if he knew that that thing is bad, he won't be happy to expose himself. So stakeholder awareness and information is very, very critical. And this is the duty of everybody. The media, the state governments, the farmers association, traders, warehouses.
Yeah, Dr. Isegbe, this was just one of the issues we had penciled down to talk about, the question of chemicals being used, pesticides being used for preservation purposes, and the fact that out there is a long list of such chemicals and pesticides which shouldn't be used. And we find that there is either a low level of awareness about this amongst those who use them, or in other cases, there are even local, concoctions which might also be toxic, which a lot of people have come to use. Do you worry about this high level of ignorance about dangers of using some of these things on produce, farm produce?
Yeah, I do. As a national quarantine officer, I do. I'm very well too. But see, this is a systemic issue. It's a national issue that we need to treat as Nigerians. Permit me to ask. People indulge in self-medication. That is even for their own lives. So you can imagine that someone who does self-medication, when it comes to agricultural produce, what will he not do? So the message the quarantine service is passing out is that it is unhealthy to use any chemical product on any food item without supervision and without approval. That's the jingles that were circulating. So whether you're a farmer, you need to be careful. If you are one that consumes the agricultural produce, you need to be careful. Because you shouldn't see these things and keep quiet. The main essence, again, for the export certification value chain, the quarantine export certification value chain, is that there are checks and balances along the 6 value chains. The state government is involved. The state government is supposed to monitor those who sell chemicals. If they have shops, are they registered? Who do they buy from? The quarantine service too, if you are going to apply those chemicals on the farm, the quarantine officer will normally ask you or direct you to where you can buy safe pesticides. Because we know those pesticides that are approved, even EU approved. And we're working closely with some companies, and then we're asking them, look, if farmers want to buy chemicals, go to this one, because we know the quality and source of the chemicals that they're buying from.
Well, at this point, what's the level of your collaboration with the subnational states?
Yeah, we do. That's why they are part of the certification value chain. We do, because any work you are doing here, you have to work within the state. Mm-hmm. We relate with the state ministries of agriculture, highlight to them commodities that they can export. In fact, the past 2 years, again, we are proposing to state governments that, look, specialize or identify 2 agro-commodities that you want to export. Based on the market value and based on the marketability, we have suggested to some state governments, because they have comparative advantage in 1 or 2 crops. I will say, look, these 2 crops are doing well. You're already doing well in them, so why don't you enhance the production and export? So that you set up, a specialized unit within your state to handle those commodities. And if each state government, can focus on at least just 2 agro-produce intended for export, my brother, we will not need oil to service our national economy. Now, let's start from hibiscus. Last year, the export of hibiscus was over 2,213 or 23 containers to just one country. And we're talking of something well above $100 million US. That is one commodity to one country. If you take ginger, if you take honey, how much is a liter of petrol? How much is a liter of honey? A liter of petrol now is about, with the assistance of Dangote, is about 820. I think that's the last price I heard about. Let's say 900, so to say. But a liter of honey is about 3,000, 4,000. So if we are producing as much honey as we are extracting oil, why do you have to bother about petrol? Honey can solve our national problem alone. So we have premium agricultural produce that sell well in the international community. And Nigeria is equidistant to virtually the major markets in the whole world. 6 hours, you are in India. 7 hours, 6 hours, you are in India. 6 hours, 7 hours you are in the US, 6 hours you are in the UK, 6 hours you are in Dubai, thereabout. So let us take advantage of this equidistant nature of our country, Nigeria. 6 hours you are in South Africa. So let's use this prime location that we have as a country.
Right, we've talked so much about the export side of it. Now let's look at the other side, the ones that come in here, what we import, ensuring that they also meet the international standards and all the requirements. So where do you come in here?
Yes, we are at the major international airports and the seaports. We've had calls where we intercepted 17 suitcases of beef, beef packed in suitcases, we intercepted them, we intercepted other consignments, some carry seeds. We intercept a lot of plantable seeds, that are coming to countries. Some people travel and they say, oh, this cucumber is looking very fine. I like the picture. Oh, I've never seen yellow watermelon. And they want to bring it in. They want things that probably do not grow here. And if you don't have the proper certification, will not allow it to come into the country, because these things come with their peculiarities, they come with their diseases probably that we are not aware of, and we don't want them to come in. Cassava, we don't want anybody to bring in cassava cuttings or leaves. Why? Because we have what they call the cassava brown streak disease. It's close by. It's already close by in Central Africa. Now, banana too. Banana stems, we don't want them to come into the country because of what we call the BBTV, the banana bunchy top virus.
We do see bananas coming into
no. Banana plants.
Okay.
Right. We don't want them to come in. So for chicken and beef, for now, we don't give import permit for them. Yes. So for those commodities that we don't allow them to come into the country, we watch and we ensure that they don't come in. For those that the law permits them to come into the country, they will normally come with an import permit, issued, to allow those things to come in. So we allow them to come in.
Dr. Isegbe, what about the matter of animals that come in?
Through the airports or seaport or land borders?
Land borders.
My brother, we have 4,073 kilometers. That's the perimeter of Nigerian land. The coastline is 873 kilometers. It's virtually difficult for the quarantine service alone, to man that entire length or perimeter of border for Nigeria. But we work closely with the Nigerian Customs Service, with NDLA, with Immigration Service, and we play complementary roles, where these three agencies say things that of quarantine importance, they relay with us. And when we see things that of either of customs importance or immigration, we relate. And of course, of recent too, the Army has come in, and we're working closely with all those security agencies of government. For our borders are porous when it talks about traffic that has to do with animals, because there's no particular tracks. The particular tracks and stations where we have quarantine stations, now those people evade the quarantine stations. We have a quarantine station at Gaydam, we have at Ilela, we have at Kamba.
So ordinarily they're supposed to come through those stations, where whatever they bring in is certified.
Yes. They're supposed to come in through those borders. We inspect the animals, and if there's any reason why they will not come in, whether detain the entire head or we isolate those ones depending on the situation that we find on ground. So, okay, look, you can go with this, but this one will have to treat. Or this one cannot even enter because it's carrying a disease that is not treatable. So we'll advise you on what to do. And you're supposed to come in with what they call a a certificate, the permit that enables you to come for your own country to our own country. So those standard regulations are there. But you see people not respecting that, and they just come in where they will not be inspected and where they can come in, freely without inspection. But the current Minister for Livestock Development, when I had a meeting with him, this is part of the priorities that he has in mind, to develop all the quarantine stations, improve on them, improve surveillance of the animals that are coming and out. And you could see how passionate he is, in addressing us, in those areas to ensure that we perform very well.
Well, one quick one, which might be a final question and outlook on this program, would be the matter relating to aquatic resources, where also, from your mandate, fisheries also issue a certification for
sanitary certificate?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, for aquatic resources, yes, we do. Nigeria has, and Nigerian waters, we have one of the best species of shrimps and prawns. In the international market, they sell, they have premium price for them, and so many countries are in their need of our shrimps. One or two companies who do offshore fishing, and they've even done their own integrated aqua farms, where they are now growing, those shrimps within the sea, but now cultured. So we are in discussion with several countries. In fact, at this particular moment, the memorandum of understanding between Nigeria and one of the major importers, is almost concluded. Is at the Foreign Affairs now for the execution of the agreement, the quarantine agreement between the Quarantine Service of Nigeria, representing the federal government of Nigeria, and then that importing country. So once that is done, it will open the floodgates for the export of shrimps, and prawns to that country. We are equally, Nigeria does a lot of tilapia farming and catfish. So any country that is in need of those commodities, we need to do the necessary PRAs for them between the Quarantine Service of Nigeria and the Quarantine Service of the importing country. And once they are okay with the submission that we have given to them, then they will sign the agreement, bilateral agreement, then trade, can commence in those ones. We have some shellfishes. We have so many aquatic animals that Nigeria can export to some countries. Of course, Nigeria is a member of the international community where, the category of fishing is, fishing is categorized.
Right.
The nets are such that there are particular sizes of fish that are not allowed, because you need to give room for regeneration. So if you ever catch, fishes that are smaller, it's against international regulations, and you can be sanctioned for doing that. So we are there to ensure that those international regulations are fulfilled to the best and interests of our country, Nigeria.
From what you've seen so far, does Nigeria have the wherewithal to elevate its resources, either by way of aquatic resources and the rest of them, to that level where significant incomes would come through, and what could stand in the road of this?
100%, straight away. I won't even blink my eyes. We have the capacity. This current administration, the administration of our president, His Excellency Tinubu, you could see the massive importation of tractors coming into the country. Niger State alone has brought in about 2,000, and the federal government is bringing in 9,000, in addition to other equipments. By the time you add them up together, I don't know what the number is right now. The Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, was at the launch recently, I think 2 weeks ago, where they launched, Mr. President launched a number of tractors. Some years back, the tractor density for Nigeria per 100 square kilometers is below 10. And that is not good. So that's what this present government have identified, and to encourage youth too to enter into agriculture and to be able to produce what we need to produce, to feed a population of 220 million for now. By 2050, Nigeria will be about 450 million. If we don't plan for it, we'll not be able to feed ourselves by 2050. And that's what this present administration is doing, by bringing in this large number of tractors so that the cooperative associations, youths, can take into large-scale farming. What one tractor can do in 1 hour, I'm not sure 100 people can do in 1 hour. So we'll upscale our production level. We have enough improved seeds in this country that will help us, so that we can improve. We have a large number of agronomists that will help in the production so that we can produce enough. The good thing about Nigeria too is that we don't have these natural disasters. We don't have landslides. It's of recent that we're having these floods. If not, we don't have harsh weather like winter that will prevent people from farming. We can farm all year round. And we have large water bodies. So, and I know too, the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, they are working closely with the Federal Minister of Water Resources. I was in a meeting where they were discussing the collaborations on how, they can use these large water bodies, so that they can do dry season farming. Once we do farming during the rainy season and do dry season farming, it's like you are producing twice already. So by the time you engage the 34 million square meters of arable land in the country that we have, about that, we will have enough, more than enough to eat and more than enough to export. Some countries produce so much that they even stockpile, and they keep some, like for food security. Nigeria, released recently some grains, to stabilize, the prices in the market. So, as a country, the Ministry for Agriculture and Food Security, they are adequately prepared, and they have started already by these machines. The use of other agricultural technology, like drones, like soil sensors, like precision agriculture, are being introduced into the country, where if land becomes a challenge, you can put steps, instead of farming like on this table, you can make a shelf, another shelf, another shelf, so that you can farm on each of those shelves to maximize the space that is available. So these are things that the current administration is taking into considerations. I know it takes a lot of money, to do this. So let's support this government, and let the youths to come out in full force, to engage in agriculture, because that's where the money is. Before you wear your shirt, before you look for where you can put your head, you need to eat good food. Or else, you may see a house and you may think that it's not even a house, because you are so hungry you can't even identify the house. So let's produce more than what we are producing now. We have the capacity and we can do it.
All right. Well, very interesting conversation we've had so far. And so at this point, we'll have to thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Isegbe, Comptroller General, Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service. We look forward to asking you to come again so we can review and project further into how the nation is executing its food security program. Thank you once again for coming on.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm grateful.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One on One. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.